Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Menachos daf Nun Hey. We are going to begin on Nun Hey Amud Aleph by the word Tanrabanan, about 7 or 8 lines from the top. So Tarmin Te'enim ala Gregris. So we mentioned in yesterday's daf the difference between Te'enim and Gregris. Te'enim, as Rashi said, are figs that are lachim, they're moist, and Gregris are Te'enim, they're also figs, but they're yavashim, they're dried out. So we said that when it comes to separating truma, you could do that. However, when you're tiring Te'enim, if you're tiring the moist figs on the dry figs, it has to be b'minyan, which means the number. Because if it's volume, as Rashi explains, if it's based on the volume, so each of these figs, because they're moist, are much larger than the Gregris, which are shriveled up. So we said that, again, you could be tarmin te'enim al Gregris, but makim shiragil lasos te'enim Gregris. Now he says it's in a place where the custom is that we can make te'enim into Gregris, that therefore it's considered really like the same min, because they're both figs, but the idea is that it has to be that it's a place where typically te'enim, which are moist, become Gregris. V'lo Gregris al te'enim. However, this opinion says that dried figs we cannot take al te'enim, even in a place where te'enim become gregris, because gregris can't become te'enim again. Okay, similar to as we saw before about 20 blot ago, that a nevela could be shchuta, but shchuta can't be nevela. We're going batzler batal mavutal as we saw before. So that is that piece. So look at Rashi. Makom shiragal lasais. Mitsuvan anoshim shiasu gregris vishtamru, so they are watching them. Ohu atzmo yasoisim gregris, he himself makes them dried up. Lachazmanim te'enim shaloi, if they're his. Mokum shein rogil loy. However, in a place that it's not the custom for the te'enim to become gregris, no. Debi'inon shitr min hamaskayim. It needs to be something that lasts long. So when it comes to anim, because they're moist, so that liquid could cause mold, and therefore it's not going to last for a long time. And therefore it's not something in which is a miskayim. And that's the reason why, if it's not something in which will potentially be gregris, so then you can't separate. And again, we don't separate Gregris onto Te'enim. I feel Bamkashar will also stand in Gregris. Amar Mar, Tarmin Te'enim al Gregris, but Makam Shragin Lasais Te'enim Gregris. So it said that in a place where it's the custom to make Te'enim into Gregris, so then you could be Tarim. But Makam Shragin in, but Makam Shragin Loi. Not in a place where they're not Ragin. If let's say there's a kain around, so what are we concerned about? As Rashi said, because they're going to end up spoiling. But if it's a kayin, what's the problem? But kayin tarimin hayafet, right? So we don't care if which one's if it's a miskayim or not a miskayim. The kohen will have it; he'll be able to eat it right away. Elipshita deleka kayin must be. We're talking about a case where there is no kohen, and that's the reason why we are particular that. Because it may rot otherwise, therefore that's why you can't do it. So Amos Seifa, V'lo Gregris al Te'enim, V'afil b'makam shregel lasos Te'enim Gregris. Now v'ida like a kayin, if there's no kayin around, my low, what's the problem? But tanan makam shein kayin, if there's no kayin around, tayimin hamaskayim, right? So what's the problem? You should be tiring from the Gregris because that's maskayim; it'll last longer. Elipshit de'ika kayin. So for the Gemara, so Reisha the lake of Kayin say for the Ikakayin, it doesn't make sense. And yeah, it's fine. The Reisha lake of Kayin, because if there's no Kayin, that's the reason why it's a problem. Because if there's a Kayin, it shouldn't matter, even if it's not a place where they separate or don't. And the seifa is the ikka kayin. The seifa is where there is a kayin. Fine. So Omer Papa Shma Mina Dachina Makmina and Mastisa Betray Taimi Vu Makmina Betray Tanoi. It's better to have like one opinion and it just have two different reasonings, like we just said, one with a coin, one without a coin, than to say it's just like a machlokas Tanoi. Okay, so let's look at question 8, which we saw half of question 8, but let's see the whole thing again. Tarmin to Adam al Gregris. Pamakam Shurgil Lasos to Adam Gregris. The aim Tarmin Baminan Baminyan o Bamida Umadua. So that we already saw. That we Tarmin Baminyan because otherwise it would, if it was Bamida with volume, it would be less. Ha'im Madomer de Ika Kayin or the Leka Kayin Umah Hechrach. So we just said it has to be a case where there is no kayin, right? Because if there is a kayin, so we should say even a situation where it's not ruggle, you could be tarim in a hayafa avshein miskayim, because it doesn't need to be miskayim, but the kayin is here. So it must be a case is where it is not a the kayin is not around. Okay, maybe TA4. Yeah. Question TA4. Matai, so when mafrishin te'enim al gregus v'lo hefech. When do we say that there's a difference, that sometimes you could separate from te'enim onto gregus, but not the other way around? What's the problem over here? So we said two answers. Either b'di'ika kayin, right? If there's a situation where there is a kayin, so therefore, we'll give him the yafa, we'll give him the better one. Or b'makam shirgin lasses te'enim gregris, or in a place where te'enim can become gregris, so then it's also allowed. Okay, so that's TA 4. Fine. So that's that. TB 7. Exactly the same question. So I wrote im haminig lasais te'enim legregris im ikakayin v'im lav hoichan achar hamaskayim. Right. So we talk about a situation where there's a kayin, because if there is no kayin, then we always go basa miskayim. We don't go basa what's the yafa. Okay. So that is TB 7. Okay. All right, let's keep on moving. All right, so let's see the next Mishnah. Kol menachos, when it comes to the mincha and the process of making the mincha, there's different steps. Niloishis, when it comes to the kneading of the dough, b'poishrin, it should be done with warm water. And because there's warm water, as we saw before, we went out from the pasuk that you have to mishamran. You have to guard it shel yachmitzu, because as the parak began, outside of two exceptions, the shtei lechem, when it comes to the taida, it's always chametz. It has to be made out of chametz. It has to be made of matzah, rather. Pardon me. So because of that, we have to be very careful to make sure it doesn't become chametz. V'mechmitzu, let's say taka does become chametz, shireha oyver b'loisaseh. Even if it's just the leftovers, you violate the loisaseh. Shnemar kol mincha shir takriv Hashem lo se'asa chametz. You're not it cannot be chametz, which we'll understand what exactly. Rashi says v'areisha koy de gatani u'masharman shel yachmitzu mikoydim kamitzu mishtoi. Okay, the chayiv al lishta. You're chayiv when it comes to the kneading, v'al richta in the forming and shaping, v'al afiyata, as well as the baking. In other words, you can be chayiv on each one by themselves. Okay, so says the Gemara, min hanimil. So how do we know this? So Amar Reish Lakish, the pasuk says lo sefech chametz chelkam, afil chelkam lo sefech chametz, which means that even the shirayim, which the kohanim eat, which is just like a portion, right, which is only a chelik of the entirety, still you have violated. That's how we see from the Mishnah that if the chametz, if the even the shirayim become chametz. Over the loisa say for that. So I thought we actually need this pasuk to teach us something else as we continue to do nun ham and beis. The pasuk says lo sasa chametz. So what's this coming to tell us? And this actually this Rashi above is Shach from an Aleph, right? Minamid chayiv b'shirayim v'oiver aloisa say, right? So that's actually Shach and Amud Aleph, okay? So, but we already have this other pasuk. If he should never lo sasa chametz yachol yehi chayiv al achas al kulam. You would think maybe only chayiv on one of them. Talmud Lema siyafech afia. It mentions even when it comes to the baking, which tells us that saying even when it comes to one aspect, you're going to be chayiv on each one separately. And because of that, afia b'chal hoisa. So that is in the general category. So ma yotz. So why does it single it out? So we say it's lahakish shaleha ma afia miuchedes shehi ma'isi achidi b'chel leha b'mnei atzmai. Okay, let's stop. Let me translate a couple words here. I'm going to read the whole thing. So just like afia is a ma'isa b'fnei atzmai, and clearly the pasuk, it's a loisa say, if a person would make it chametz at that stage, so too at any other stages would be the same thing. Le'asui kituf. That would even include putting the water on the surface of the dough. So this is a question. I thought that's what we learned out, right? How could you tell me that this pasuk is coming to tell you that it's a loisa say when it comes to the shirayim if it becomes chametz? We need it to tell us that you're chayiv on every single one. So the Gemara says anan mechelkam kamrinan. In other words, it's from a separate part of the pasuk. It's one pasuk, but chelkam is what teaches us even the chelik, even the shirayim, even a small amount, you're going to be chayiv. But it's not the same drush, it's not the same words of lo siafa, right? That's a totally different part of the pasuk. Even again, the entirety of the pasuk says lo siafa chametz chelkam, so but they're two separate words, so you can make a separate drasha on each one. Okay. The Ebakuli lahachudasa. Maybe it's only going to tell you this, right? Not about the shirayim. Chelkam lo siaf chametz. My lo siaf chametz chelkam. Shema min hatarti teaches us those two things. The ema fia dipra rachmana. Maybe the reason why it mentions baking specifically, and why does the Torah specify that to single it out? L'chayiv chada. Inoch l'chayiv chada akul, right? So maybe when it comes to afia, maybe you're going to be chayiv, right? However, let's look at Rashi. Maybe the fact that it mentions afia as a prat is come to tell you that in that case you're going to be chayiv for that one alone, but all the other things you're not going to be chayiv on each one separately. But maybe you'll be chayiv on all the others combined. So you'll end up only being chayiv twice. So maybe that's what it's telling them. Maybe afia is the independent one, but not everything else. Maybe the other ones are coupled together. How do you know even on a masi yachidi that you're going to be chayiv? So that's the question. Mishum dahavi davar shoy b'chlal v'yatzim and klal l'lamed. It's not coming only for itself. Right? This is one of the Yud Gimel drushes in which again we can learn out from. So one of them again is to tell you that even when it comes to afia, it's singled out. It was in the category and was excluded to be specific to tell you dinim for that. Namely, even though it's a ma'aseh yachidi, you're going to be chayiv for that one ma'aseh yachidi. So too, every ma'aseh yachidi will be chayiv. So that's how we learn it out from this drasha. Okay. Ve'ema lo isase klal lo siafeh prat. Klal prat in Bechlal Masha B'Prat. Afia in Midachrina Lo. Maybe it's only Afia, nothing else. So Amr Rabbi of Turiki Mishum Dahavi Klal Prat Hamurchakim Zemizeh. You're right. Maybe you should say it's a klal and a prat, but here the klal and the prat are not written right next to each other. They're distant from one another. And the din is the whole klal and prat hamurchakim zemizeh and dadas and klal prat. So you can't learn a klal prat. It's only klal prat when they're very close to one another. But when they're distant, then you can't learn out it from one from each other. Question 9. So 2 answers. First of all, it's coming to exclude specifically the baking to tell you that you're going to be chayiv not only on that but also on the Elisha, Vericha, and Vikituf, all of them bifnei atzmo. The machmetz achar machmetz chayiv. So you can be chayiv multiple times. The second is the fact that it says chelkam is to tell you that also in the shirayim you're going to be over a loisasei. Okay, so that's question 9. Now the Gemara asks, Masei Ravada Barava, V'yarmo Sam Sekedi. He said it was by himself. With klal prat and merchachim zemizeh. When it comes to a klal prat which are distant from each other, ain't done nice of a klal prat. Is it true that you can't use a klal prat anymore? I'll show you that that's not the case. I'll show you a case of a klal and a prat where the klal and the prat are not written right next to each other, but nonetheless we still learn it. How do we see this? Vosanya, the pasuk says that you should shecht it. So what's this referring to? Rashi helps us out. This is referring to the seir, the he-goat that the nasi, that the king, the leader brings. So you have to do the shechita in the same place where the shechita's oila is the same as the chatas. So heichen oila nishchetes. So where do we shecht a carbon oil? But safin. So avzeh b'safin. So therefore we learn out from here that just like the oila, in which it says, as Rashi quotes, beferish, al yerech hamizbech safoina, right, in Sefer Vayikra, it says clearly that a carbon oil is supposed to be done in the north. So too when it comes to the seir nasi, it's the same thing. V'chi anu mikan lamidin. So the question is this what we learn? Look, right now when the pasuk says, we already know that wherever the ola is brought, which is the north, so too when it comes to carbon chatas, it's the same din, right? So halam is a yatsa. So then why does it mention this by the seir nasi? We already know that it's supposed to be in the north. So what is this whole point? Is says Rashi, to establish it, basically to repeat it, to say it's not like a good choice to do it in the north. It's a requirement, right? It's ma'akev. It's something that must be done. If you don't bring it in the north, it's possible. So you tell me that's why it's mentioned maybe it's just telling you that this needs safon and nothing else. So binyan avachol, when it comes to every carbon chatas, shetuno safon, that it needs to be in the north. So time with the kasvar achman of a shachat es achatas. The only reason why it should be done in the north because the pasuk says that. Halav hachi, if it didn't say it, so havamina shezet toin safon achas toin safon. You would think that this one requires safon, but not this. So my timer, v'amishum dahavi klal prat, v'afa gav nerechokim zemizeh, don't know b'klal prat. So technically, even though it's they're not next to each other, nonetheless we would still be done klal prat. Look at Rashi, klal prat, tishachet hachatas klal. Okay, shech hachatas, that's a klal. Kol hachatas, but safon, all the carbon chatas in the north, v'shachan oiso shecht it, right? So that's prat seir nasi, specifically the seir nasi. V'loy acher, maybe that means nothing else, right? So maybe you would think that would be the case. Now, okay, so the afal gav and rechokim, the v'shachat oiso ksiv vayikra, v'tishchat hachatas ksiv b'tzaves aharon. Right? They're different parshas. One's parshas vayikra, one's the parshas sav. Nonetheless, we see that you could still learn a klal prat even though they're not next to each other. Right? So it ends up, the din is, we know that we do the shechita in the south, in the north, in the Safin, but at the same time, it's only because of this pasuk. Because if it wasn't for the pasuk, we would actually say maybe not, or maybe it's only by the Sir Nasi. So how could you say this point that when it comes to our situation, going all the way above, about the baking the mincha and it becoming chametz, that you violated a lav, and maybe all the other things, other ma'aseh chiddush also violate a lav. No, maybe it's only there because we should establish a kal prat. So Masker Rav Ashi. So high kal prat who? What do you mean it's a kal prat? Prat klal who? It should really be a prat and a klal. And v'nasa klal moisav al prat. And what happens is when it's written the other way around, is it adds to the prat. This Rabbi who kol mil, it adds other things, right? So why are you? The whole klal prat thing to begin with is difficult to understand. It really should be a prat of klal. El tana oiso kakashale. So our Tana asked the question of a Hakakamer. Oh, eno ela shezet toin saflein the ein acher toin saflein. In other words, the whole question is, when it comes to the first time it's written, is v'shachat oisai, right? And then when it says v'tishchat hachatas, that's in sav. So the first one is actually prat, right? In Sefer Vayikra, okay? In Sefer Vayikra, it's a prat, and then it's afterwards it's a klal, right? As we saw in Rashi. So basically, so he's saying like this: Elatana oisu kakashle, v'hachikamer. Oh, eno elish is that tain safain v'enachad tain safain. Maybe only this one needs safain because of rachmana oiso. V'hashd the nafgalem v'shachad azachatas oiso mutimai. What's it come to exclude? We mute, and we have this siman nachshon v'shachad oiv b'pesach siman. So also, but safain. So only this is going to be in the north. Vein seir nachshon but safain, but not talking about the other karbanos. Specifically talking about the seir nachshon. Says Rashi, shekrivu hanasiim. When it comes to the nasiim, when there were makriv karbanos, the seiri chatos b'chanukas hamizbeach. When they inaugurated the mizbeach in Parshas Naso, and they brought the numerous offerings. So why is it called nachshain? Why it's Nasiim? It's because Harishan, because he was the first one, so we just call it that. But the truth is that all the Nasiim brought the same thing, as we saw at the very end of Parshas Naso. So in that situation, it's not like a chatos. They didn't sin. They're bringing offerings as part of the inauguration of the Mizbeach. So therefore, they actually did not require safon. Since they're actually included, that you do smicha on these animals. Actually, you don't need when it comes to the Nasiim, you did not need to do. You didn't need safon, but the smicha is still necessary. Smicha gufun. And how do we know when it comes to the seir nachshain, when it comes to the karbanos of the siyam, that smicha was still required? Asanya. So clearly, smicha was still necessary. Shimon Aimer, we continue in Bava Aleph. Rabbis seiri avodas kachavim was smicha. So he says that when it comes to the goat of a person who was oived avodah zarah, and it was necessary to bring a seir, so also there smicha was done. So maskav Ravina Tenach Rabbi Yehuda, I could understand according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says it's coming to include the seir nachshain, Rav Shimon Ma'ikumeimar, right? So again, we had the question, like how does he know that when it comes to the Seir Nachshain, when it comes to the Karbanos of the Nesiim, that Smicha was done, right? How do we know Smicha? So Marzutra Buri the Rav Mari Ravino Rabbi Huda Nami. So according to Rabbi Huda, you can also say Madis Rabbi Rabbi Umaydalos Rabbi Lolos Rabbi, right? You can just simply say, according to him, why do we say there's smicha? Because when it comes to smicha, it was included. But what was not included, namely suffering, is not included. So therefore, the seer nachshin didn't require suffering, but it did require smicha. V'chitema, if you want to tell me, ilom atikra, what pasuk was not excluding it, havamina tesi b'binyanav, so you can learn out from a binyanav. So smicha gufa, lishta kramine, that it doesn't have to say anything. V'tesi b'binyanav. Ella shamedaitais loyalfinan. When it comes to shamedaitais, which is the Nesiim, which is Shah, you can't learn out what was done there to all future generations. As Rashi says, Hilkach amai itzrach lamuti matzafain, so achinami Shah midaris loyalfinan. So basically, we're saying that what was done in the time of the Nesiim does not have relevance to the dinim of the future generations. So because of that, says Rashi, Oiso hakarmen masafan avul hashaychet yochel. Okay, El Shola Dairis again. Hilkach amai itzrach lamute mitzafain. So then, why do you need a miyat? Okay, adkan.